The night the whole town of Adesuwa stopped breathing. It happened right there in the middle of Chief Obi's daughter's birthday party, the biggest party Adesuwa had seen in 10 years. Lanterns were strung up between the mango trees. Music was playing from 2 giant speakers that someone had borrowed from a church in the next town over. Children were running between the legs of grown-ups, and grandmothers were laughing so hard their wrappers kept slipping. And then Amara walked in. Not the Amara everyone knew, the quiet girl who sold groundnut soup by the roadside. Not the Amara whose clothes were always a little too big, patched at the elbows. Not the Amara that Kofi, the richest young man in town, had publicly laughed at just 3 weeks before, in front of everyone at the market. This Amara walked in like she carried the sky on her shoulders and wasn't even tired from it. She wore a dress the color of sunset, deep orange that shifted to gold when the lantern light touched it. Her head was wrapped in green cloth tied so neatly it looked like it had been done by someone who had all the time in the world. Her feet were bare, not because she couldn't afford shoes, but because she had chosen to be exactly who she was. And when she opened her mouth to sing, because she did, she just sang, right there, no microphone needed. Every single person in that courtyard went silent. Every single one. Even Kofi. Especially Kofi. And what happened next? What did Amara sing? And why did Kofi's face turn the color of the earth after heavy rain? Well, sit down. Let me tell you how we got there. Adesuwa was not a big town. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, your mother's name, and probably the name of the dog your grandmother used to keep 20 years ago. It sat along a red dirt road somewhere between a busy highway and a river that never quite dried up, even in the hottest months. There was one school, one church, a small mosque, a market that opened every other day, and a well in the center of town where people came to fetch water and, more importantly, to talk. Amara Adeyemi had lived in Adesuwa her whole life, all 14 years of it. She lived with her grandmother, a short, round woman named Mama Busy, in a small house with a corrugated iron roof that sang loudly whenever it rained. Mama Busy was not a wealthy woman. She sold smoked fish at the market and sometimes did washing for families who could afford to pay someone else to do it. But she was rich in something money could not buy. She knew things. Old things. The kind of things that had been passed down from grandmother to grandmother, like seeds carried on the wind. Mama Busy knew how to read the sky before a storm came. She knew which plants could heal a fever and which ones could calm a crying baby. She knew songs, hundreds of them, songs that were older than the town itself. And every night before Amara went to sleep, Mama Busy would sit beside her and sing one. "Grandma," Amara asked one evening, her voice small and curious, "why do you always sing to me? Everyone else's grandma just tells them to go to sleep." Mama Busy smiled the way she always did when she was about to say something important, a slow, warm smile, like the sun coming out after a cloud. "Because sleep is a journey, my child," she said. "And every journey needs a good song to carry it." Amara loved those songs. She loved them the way other children loved candy or television. She would hum them while she walked to school. She would whisper them while she helped Mama Busy cook. And sometimes, when no one was listening, she would sing them out loud, really sing them, and the sound that came out of her was so full and so deep that even the birds would stop to listen. But Amara never sang in front of other people. Not once. Because in Adesuwa, there was something that could hurt a person more than a slap or a harsh word. It was called being called too local. It was not a kind thing. When people in town said someone was too local, they meant that person was stuck in the old ways. That they were not modern. Not educated enough. Not smart enough. Not good enough. It was the kind of word that was wrapped around a judgment, tied with a bow of cruelty, and handed to someone like a gift they never asked for. And Amara had been given that gift many times. Kofi Mensah was the son of Mr. Mensah, who owned the only car dealership within 30 kilometers of Adesuwa. Kofi was 16, tall, and walked around town like the ground had been put there specifically for him to step on. He wore clothes that came from catalogs, not the market. He had a phone that was always buzzing with messages from friends in the city. And he had a voice, not a singing voice, but a loud, confident voice, that could fill a room even when no one had invited it in. Kofi was not cruel on purpose. Or at least, that is what he told himself. He thought he was being funny. He thought the things he said made people like him. And in some ways, they did, because people often laugh at jokes that are not really jokes, just to be on the safe side. The day it happened at the market was a Tuesday. Amara was standing behind her small table, stirring a pot of groundnut soup that Mama Busy had helped her make that morning. The soup was thick and golden, and it smelled so good that even people who were not hungry found themselves slowing down as they walked past. Kofi was walking by with two of his friends, laughing about something on his phone. He glanced at Amara's table and stopped. "Amara," he said, not unkindly, but not kindly either. "You know, you could get a real job instead of selling soup on the side of the road like it's 1990. His friends laughed. A few people nearby turned to look. Amara did not say anything. She stirred her soup. "What, you can't even talk?" Kofi added, grinning now. "Or are you just too local to understand what I'm saying?" More laughter. Not from everyone, some people looked away, uncomfortable. But enough people laughed that the sound of it followed Amara home that evening like a stone tied to her back. That night, Mama Busy noticed that Amara did not eat much dinner. She noticed the way her granddaughter's eyes were red, though no tears had fallen, as if the tears had been swallowed before they could escape. "What happened today, my child?" Mama Busy asked. Amara told her. All of it. Mama Busy listened without interrupting. When Amara finished, the old woman was quiet for a long time. Then she reached across the table and took Amara's hand in hers, a hand that was small and soft, wrapped in a hand that was rough and strong. "Listen to me," Mama Busy said, and her voice was not loud, but it carried the kind of weight that made you lean in. "There are people in this world who see a river and all they notice is the mud at the bottom. But that does not change the fact that the river is deep, and that it flows, and that it gives life to everything it touches." She squeezed Amara's hand. "You are the river, Amara. And one day, not today, maybe not tomorrow, someone is going to look at you and see the water, not the mud. And when that happens, they will understand everything they missed." Amara nodded slowly. But inside, a quiet question sat in her chest like a stone: what if no one ever looks? And that question stayed with her, all the way until the night of Chief Obi's daughter's birthday party, when everything changed. But we are not there yet. First, we need to talk about what Mama Busy taught Amara about the songs. The thing about Mama Busy's songs was that they were not just songs. Amara had always felt it, a strange tingling warmth in her chest when she sang them, like drinking something hot on a cold morning. But she never understood what it meant. She thought it was just the way music made people feel. She thought everyone felt it. But not everyone did. And the songs were not just melodies passed down for fun. It started on a Wednesday morning, 3 days after the market incident. Amara woke up earlier than usual, not because an alarm woke her, but because a bird had landed on her windowsill and was singing so loudly it was as if the bird was trying to deliver a message. She lay there, listening. And without thinking, she hummed back. The bird tilted its head. Then it sang again, a different tune this time, shorter, simpler. And Amara hummed it back again, matching every note. The bird stayed for a full minute after that, perfectly still, as if it was listening to her. Then it flew away. Amara sat up in bed, her heart beating a little faster than usual. She looked at the window where the bird had been, then at the small photograph of her parents on the shelf beside her bed, a photo taken before they moved to the city for work, leaving her in Mama Busy's care when she was just 3 years old. She picked up the photograph and held it close. "I miss you," she whispered. And then, without meaning to, she sang one of Mama Busy's songs, the one her grandmother always said was for calling people close. She didn't think anything of it at first. But that afternoon, when she walked to the market to set up her soup table, something unusual happened. People stopped. Not just to smell the soup, they stopped and looked at her. Some of them smiled. One old woman, Mrs. Adoni, who had never spoken a single word to Amara in her life, walked right up to the table and sat down on the bench beside her. "I don't know why," Mrs. Adoni said, shaking her head as if she was confused by her own behavior, "but I felt like I needed to come see you today." Amara blinked. "Oh. Would you like some soup?" "Yes," said Mrs. Adoni. "Yes, I think I would." It was a small moment. A quiet one. But Amara noticed it. And she filed it away in the back of her mind, the way you file away a strange dream you are not ready to forget. Over the next 2 weeks, Amara began to pay closer attention to the songs. She started keeping a small notebook, a blue one with torn edges that she had found in her school bag, and she wrote down every song Mama Busy had ever taught her. Not just the words, but the feelings that came with them. She wrote things like, "This one makes people feel calm, like sitting under a tree on a cool day," and "This one feels like remembering something good that happened a long time ago." And then she began to test them. Quietly. Carefully. The way a scientist tests an idea, not with big loud experiments, but with small, patient ones. One morning, she sang the "Calling People Close" song while walking past the school. By the time she reached the end of the road, 3 children she had never spoken to before were walking beside her, chatting as if they had been friends forever. They didn't even seem to notice that they had changed direction to follow her. Another day, she hummed the calm song while sitting in the shade near the well. Within minutes, 2 women who had been arguing loudly about a fence on the other side of the yard stopped mid-sentence, looked at each other, and then, without a single word of explanation, shrugged and walked away, as if the argument had simply evaporated. Amara's eyes went wide. She ran home that evening and burst through the door, nearly knocking over a pot of stew Mama Busy had on the stove. "Grandma," she said, breathless. "The songs, they do something. They are not just songs." Mama Busy did not look surprised. She did not even stop stirring the stew. She simply turned her head and looked at Amara with those calm, deep eyes of hers, the kind of eyes that made you feel like she had already known everything you were about to say. "Of course they do something, my child," she said, as if Amara had just told her the sky was blue. "Did you think I was singing to you every night just for fun?" Amara stood there, mouth open, notebook clutched to her chest. "But how? How do they work?" she asked. Mama Busy turned off the stove and wiped her hands on her wrapper. Then she sat down on the wooden stool near the door and patted the space beside her. "Sit," she said. "And listen. A long time ago, Mama Busy began, before Adesuwa was a town, before there were roads or schools or shops, there was just land. And on that land lived people who understood something that most people today have forgotten." She paused, looking out through the open door at the evening sky, where the sun was turning everything gold. They understood that the world is not just what you can see and touch. There is another layer, a layer made of feeling, of connection, of energy that moves between people, between the earth, between everything that is alive. Amara listened, her eyes wide. The songs, Mama Busy continued, were not made up. They were found. Found by people who listened very carefully, to the wind, to the water, to the way the earth breathed at night. They found the sounds that matched the feelings inside that invisible layer. And when someone sang those sounds out loud, with a true heart, mind you, not just with the mouth, the invisible layer would move. It would shift. And people around them would feel it, even if they did not understand why. She turned to look at Amara. That is what the songs are, my child. They are keys. And the door they open is inside people's hearts. Amara swallowed. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, but from something bigger. Something that felt like standing at the edge of a very tall cliff and looking out at the ocean for the first time. Can anyone sing them? She asked. Anyone can try, said Mama Busy. But only someone with a true heart can make them walk. The songs will not move if the singer does not mean what they feel. They can hear a lie, Amara. They always know. Amara thought about that for a long time. She thought about Kofi's voice at the market, loud and confident, but hollow inside, like a drum with no skin. She thought about her own voice, quiet, unsure, but full. So full it sometimes frightened her. Grandma, she said softly. Why did you teach them to me? Mama Busy smiled, that slow, warm smile again. Because you are the one who will need them most, she said. And before Amara could ask what that meant, the old woman stood up, kissed the top of her head, and went back to the kitchen to finish cooking dinner. The invitation to Chief Obi's daughter's birthday party arrived on a Wednesday, stuck to the wooden post outside Mama Busy's house, written in neat blue ink on a piece of cardboard. Everyone in Adesuwa had received one. It was the kind of party that happened once in a generation. Chief Obi's eldest daughter, Adesuwa, was turning 18, and her father had spared no expense. Amara looked at the invitation for a long time, turning it over in her hands. On one side it said, all of Adesuwa is welcome. On the other side, someone had drawn a small picture of a dancing girl beneath a tree. You should go, said Mama Busy, appearing behind her as if from nowhere, a talent the old woman had perfected over many years. I don't know, said Amara. She thought about the last big gathering she had attended, a school assembly, 6 months ago, where a group of girls had whispered behind their hands and glanced at her old shoes. She thought about Kofi, who would almost certainly be there, with his loud voice and his sharp jokes. I don't think I belong at something like that, she said quietly. Mama Busy took the invitation from her hand and looked at it. Then she looked at Amara, really looked at her, the way she always did when she was about to say something that mattered. My child, she said. You do not go to a place because you belong there already. You go because you are meant to show them what belonging looks like. Amara did not fully understand what her grandmother meant. Not yet. But that night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain tap against the iron roof like tiny fingers knocking, she made a decision. A quiet one. A small one. But it was the kind of decision that changes everything, the kind that starts like a single drop of water and, by morning, becomes a flood. She was going to the party. And she was going to sing. The night of the party arrived faster than Amara expected. One moment it was 3 days away. Then 2. Then 1. And then suddenly it was Saturday evening, and the sound of music and laughter was drifting across the rooftops of Adesuwa like smoke from a cooking fire, warm, alive, impossible to ignore. Amara stood in front of the small mirror in Mama Busy's house, staring at her own reflection as if she was looking at a stranger. The dress was not new. Mama Busy had found it at the second-hand stall in the market 2 days before, a simple dress, but beautiful in the way that simple things sometimes are. It was the color of sunset, deep orange at the top, fading to gold at the bottom, as if someone had dipped it in the sky itself. Mama Busy had washed it twice, ironed it carefully, and hung it on the door like a painting. It was meant for you, Mama Busy had said when she showed it to Amara. I could feel it. Now Amara touched the fabric with her fingertips. It was soft, softer than anything she had ever worn. She turned to the side, watching the way the collar moved when she moved. Grandma, she called out. I don't know how to tie my wrapper on my head. I've never done it like this before. Mama Busy appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her own outfit, a quiet blue wrapper and a neatly folded gele on her head. She carried a piece of green cloth in her hands, folded into a perfect square. "Come here," she said. "And close your eyes." Amara obeyed. She felt Mama Busy's hands, gentle but sure, wrapping the cloth around her head, folding, tucking, shaping. It took only a minute. When Mama Busy stepped back, she said, "Now open." Amara opened her eyes and looked in the mirror. She barely recognized herself. Not because she looked like someone else. She looked like herself, but like a version of herself she had never been allowed to see before. Like the real her, the one that had been hiding underneath all the years of being told she was not enough. "Grandma," she whispered. "I look. You look like who you have always been," Mama Busy said simply. "Tonight, you just let people see it." They walked to the party together, Mama Busy and Amara, side by side along the red dirt road. The evening air was cool and carried the smell of fried plantains and grilled meat. As they got closer, the music grew louder, a mix of old highlife and newer songs that made people's feet move whether they wanted them to or not. The party was held in Chief Obi's compound, a wide open space behind his house, bordered by mango trees and lit up with dozens of paper lanterns that someone had strung between the branches. They glowed soft and warm, like stars that had come down from the sky to watch the celebration. Tables were set up along one side, heavy with food, jollof rice, pounded yam, egusi soup, fried fish, and more groundnut soup than Amara had ever seen in one place, which made her smile. Children ran between the legs of grown-ups. Old men sat in chairs near the edge, nodding their heads to the music. Young people danced in the middle of the open space, laughing and bumping into each other. And there, near the center of everything, was Kofi. He was standing with a group of his friends, wearing a white shirt that looked like it had been ironed by someone who was paid to iron things. He was laughing at something on his phone, his head thrown back, his voice loud enough to be heard over the music. Amara saw him and felt something tighten in her chest, not fear, exactly. Something heavier than fear. Something closer to the feeling you get when you stand at the edge of a deep pool and know you are about to jump in, but you haven't jumped yet. "Breathe," said Mama Busy, quietly, without even looking at her. Amara breathed. For the first hour, Amara stayed near the edges of the party. She talked to Mrs. Adoni, who was sitting near the food table and who smiled at her warmly and insisted she eat at least 2 plates. She watched the dancers. She listened to the music and let it settle into her bones the way music does when you are not trying to listen, just letting it in. But the whole time, something was building inside her. A feeling like pressure, like a song trapped in her chest, pushing against her ribs, wanting to get out. She had practiced. Every night for 2 weeks before the party, she had sat alone behind Mama Busy's house, under the stars, and sung. She had sung the songs her grandmother had taught her, all of them, one after another, until her voice was tired and her chest ached with feeling. She had sung them with everything she had. With every ounce of the hurt she carried. With every ounce of the love she felt for Mama Busy, for Adesuwa, for the life she had been given even when it was small and hard. And the songs had responded. She could feel it, that warmth in her chest, that invisible layer Mama Busy had talked about, moving and shifting every time she sang. During her practice sessions, even the crickets seemed to go quiet, as if they were listening. But singing alone behind the house was one thing. Singing in front of an entire town was something else entirely. The moment came at exactly the right time, the way important moments always do, even when they feel unexpected. Chief Obi's daughter, Adesuwa, had just finished cutting the cake. Everyone had clapped and cheered. The music had paused for a moment, and in that pause, that brief, quiet space, Adesuwa herself made an announcement. "Before we continue," she said, holding a small microphone that one of her cousins had brought from the city, "my father wants to invite anyone who would like to share a song or a dance. This is a celebration. It belongs to all of Adesuwa. A few people looked around, hoping someone else would go first. One boy volunteered to dance, and he did, badly, but cheerfully, and everyone laughed and clapped. Then a young woman sang a church song, and people nodded politely. And then the microphone was passed around, and no one took it, and the silence started to stretch. It was Mama Busy who nudged her. Not with words. Not even with a look. Just a small, gentle push, the kind of push a bird's mother gives when it is time to fly. A push that said, "You know what to do." Amara stood up. Her legs felt strange, not weak, but light, as if the ground was not quite solid beneath her. She walked toward the center of the space, and she did not look at Kofi. She did not look at anyone. She looked straight ahead, at the lanterns hanging in the mango trees, at the warm golden light that was falling on everything like a blanket. Someone handed her the microphone. She held it in her hand and felt its weight, cool and smooth. And then she stopped. She did not turn on the microphone. She did not need it. She opened her mouth, and she sang. There is no easy way to explain what happened next, because it was not the kind of thing that happens in ordinary life. But this is a story, and in stories, especially the old ones, the ones that have been carried from grandmother to grandmother like seeds on the wind, extraordinary things do happen. They happen when the conditions are right. When the heart is true. When the song is real. Amara sang the oldest song Mama Busy had ever taught her, the very first one, the one she had been singing since she was small enough to sit on her grandmother's lap. It was not a long song. It did not have complicated words. The words were simple, so simple that a child could understand them. They were words about seeing. About truly seeing someone. About looking past the surface of a person, past their clothes, past their name, past the way the world had decided to label them, and seeing the light that was already there, waiting to be noticed. The first note left her lips, and something shifted. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was the way the air changes just before dawn, a slight difference in temperature, a slight change in the way everything feels. But everyone in that compound felt it. Every single person. The children stopped running. They stood still, their mouths slightly open, their eyes turned toward Amara as if they had been gently turned by invisible hands. The old men in their chairs leaned forward. One of them, a man named Pa Emeka, who had not cried since his wife passed away 12 years ago, felt something warm and wet slide down his cheek, and he did not wipe it away. The women near the food table stopped talking mid-sentence. Mrs. Adoni pressed her hand to her chest and closed her eyes. And Kofi, who had been scrolling through his phone, who had been half listening to the party the way you half listen to background noise, Kofi looked up. And he froze. It was Amara's voice that stopped him. Not because it was the loudest voice in the room, it was not. It was because it was the most honest voice he had ever heard. It was a voice that carried something he had never encountered before, something raw and real and unashamed. A voice that did not apologize for existing. A voice that did not hide. He stared at her. And as he listened, something cracked open inside his chest, something he did not have a name for yet. It felt like shame, but it was deeper than shame. It felt like waking up after a very long sleep and realizing, for the first time, how much you had missed while your eyes were closed. Amara sang on. The song was not long, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3. But in those minutes, it felt as if time had slowed down, the way it does when something important is happening and the world wants to make sure no one misses it. And then she reached the last note, a single, clear tone that hung in the air like a lantern flame refusing to go out, and she let it fade. Silence. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind that comes after something beautiful. The kind that tells you everyone heard it, and everyone felt it, and no one wants to be the first to break the spell by speaking. It lasted 10 full seconds. Maybe more. And then, all at once, the compound erupted. Clapping. Cheering. People on their feet. Children jumping up and down. Mrs. Adoni was crying openly now, dabbing her eyes with the corner of her wrapper and laughing at the same time. Poor Emeka was nodding slowly, as if Amara had just confirmed something he had always suspected but never been able to prove. Chief Obi himself, a large, serious man who rarely smiled in public, stood up from his chair and walked toward Amara. He took her hand in both of his and shook it firmly. "That," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "is what Adesuwa sounds like." Amara smiled. A real smile, not the polite one she wore at the market, not the careful one she used when she was trying not to take up too much space. A smile that came from so deep inside her it looked like it had been waiting her whole life to finally get out. And Kofi. Kofi did not clap. Not at first. He stood completely still, his phone hanging at his side, forgotten. His face was not the confident, laughing face he wore every day. It was something else, something younger, something softer. Something that looked a lot like a person who had just been shown a mirror and did not like what he saw. He watched Amara walk back to where Mama Busy was sitting. He watched the old woman take her granddaughter's hand and squeeze it. He watched Amara sit down, and he saw the way her shoulders relaxed, as if she had been carrying something heavy for a very long time, and had finally, set it down. And then Kofi did something no one in Adesuwa had ever seen him do before. He walked toward Amara. Not with his usual swagger. Not with his loud voice leading the way. He walked quietly. Slowly. The way you walk when you are not sure if you deserve to be where you are going, but you know you need to go anyway. He stopped in front of her. Amara looked up at him, her expression calm, not cold, not angry. Just steady. The way a river is steady. Kofi opened his mouth. Then he closed it. Then he opened it again. He started. And then he stopped, because for the first time in his life, the words he wanted to say were not the easy ones. They were the hard ones. The true ones. He swallowed. "I was wrong," he said. "About you. About everything I said. At the market. I was wrong." The people nearby had gone quiet again, not because they were eavesdropping, but because the air had shifted again, the way it does when something honest is being spoken out loud. Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, a single, slow nod. "Thank you, Kofi," she said. Simply. Gently. Without malice, without triumph. Just the way you thank someone who has finally found the courage to tell the truth. And Kofi nodded back. And for the first time that evening, for the first time in a long time, maybe, he did not feel like the loudest person in the room. He felt like someone who was finally starting to listen. Later that night, long after the lanterns had burned low and most of the guests had gone home, Amara and Mama Busy walked back along the red dirt road together. The sky above them was thick with stars, so many that it looked like someone had scattered diamonds across black cloth. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Amara spoke. "Grandma," she said. "Was it always going to happen like that?" Mama Busy looked up at the stars and smiled. "The song was always inside you, my child," she said. "It was just waiting for you to be brave enough to let it out." Amara looked at the sky. The stars looked back. And somewhere behind them, in the quiet of Adesuwa, the town that had stopped breathing for a moment that night, the town was breathing again. Easier now. Fuller. Like a place that had just remembered something important about itself. And Amara, the girl they had called too local, the girl who sold soup by the roadside, the girl whose voice had been hiding inside her chest for 14 years, Amara walked home under the stars, and for the first time in her life, she did not feel small. She felt exactly the right size.